This program has been brought to you thanks to the generous contributions of our patrons on Patreon. Your patronage is greatly appreciated. And for more content like this, be sure to check out the Modern Alchemist channel on Patreon. Greetings, and welcome to the Modern Alchemist channel. I'm Aubrey Forrest, the Modern Alchemist, and this is Alchemy After Hours. Tonight in Alchemy After Hours, as we hang out together in the last exit and enjoy some coffee or tea, maybe a snack, I thought it would be good to continue our discussion of selecting an occult practice by continuing on with the third stage and marrying that stage with an imperative. And the imperative is why. Why are we seeking to understand the implication of these things? Why are we seeking to comprehend why these systems are designed as they are? What I want to explore is the difference between what will make you a programmer within the universe, metaphorically speaking, as opposed to simply a user of the esoteric arts. That's the difference. That's the difference between an initiate and a master. The master will seek the core cause. And this is what alchemy is about. In order to conduct any form of transmutation, one must understand the core dynamic of the substance or issue or instance or concept at hand in order for you to transmute that into something that you desire. So that is the why. The why is to ask yourself, when looking at these systems, why did they select the glyphs that they selected? Why did they select the animal forms or the characteristics of each of the various houses astrologically? Why did they select these forms to describe each of these different constellations? Why are certain colors important? What can be learned about understanding the dynamic of the color at play within the physical world? For instance, so that you can get this idea a little more clearly in your head, if I have the color red opposed to the color blue, what might be seen or represented intuitively by those colors without ever having to consult the tree of life? Well, we know simply by looking at electromagnetism that you can bake things with the red side of the spectrum. You can cook things, which causes them to come together, right? You can also burn things, but on the blue side of the spectrum with the ultraviolet, it's very disruptive, which this disruption is twofold. It can both purify and it can also sterilize. So it's just knowing that and then applying those colors explains a why. But then that leads you to another why. Why would they even start considering these things if we're talking about what we would conceive by listening to regular anthropologists or paleontologists or regular archaeologists? These people were Stone Age and primitive. So where would they acquire this information, these insights? Of course, I don't think they were Stone Age primitives. For me, just as kind of a sidebar, all I have to do to get off my high horse is simply envision what our world would be like in 100 years if the predominant source of power suddenly shifted. And the only thing that needs to happen for that to take place would be for the environment itself to become more electromagnetically charged. It would just blow up all of our equipment, all of our generators, just enough so that that charge is constantly frying electronics when we turn them on. And it wouldn't take much. It would just simply take a solar mass ejection similar to the one in the middle of the 19th century, the Carrington situation, but imagine that being protracted enough that it would just cripple all of our computer and electrical systems. It would not take long for everything to collapse in on top of itself from that point forward. And just starvation, death, disease, and war, that would all be part of the situation all over again. And it would just be a matter of switching that off. So I only have to think of that in relation to what would it be like if I were an ancient people using a different kind of technology that was dependent upon that frame of reference, and then to have that system collapse, leaving you literally powerless. How hard would it be with such specialized knowledge to retain that knowledge? And how significant would it be to have people rediscover the way you used to be able to make things or do things? It explains so much. And it shows you a different context in the way of looking at ourselves, from a perennial standpoint, moving from one frame of reference to another as described mythologically. Well, all this information, this comes from a study of mythology and a contemplation, an earnest contemplation of the why, and then asking yourself the implication of that. What does that mean? What does it mean to you as a person? What does it mean to us as a society? What is the implication of seeing these symbols that you are now going to become increasingly familiar with as you persist in your study of the esoteric by using your divinatory art, your occult practice, as a means of fine-tuning your understanding, so that when you see these things written, they are a familiar language to you that has depth and texture. It's the equivalent of, it's very much the equivalent of that episode, Star Trek Season 5, Episode 2, Darmok, where the Enterprise encounters a people that actually use a language like we use today. In fact, this is funny about that particular episode. I used that episode years ago to describe my feelings as an alchemist in terms of I have this language and the words all sound like they mean something to you, but because you don't have the proper context, you don't have the correct frame of reference, you don't know my narrative structure that my language is built upon, you don't understand what I'm saying. Well, that's absolutely everything that Star Trek episode is built around, where the Enterprise comes across a people and they have a language that is invested in their narrative structure. Well, what's blowing my mind is that we are almost becoming those people, if not already are there. And it hit me that way. I was watching Hulu with my wife, and it was Future Man, sidebar, the second season's horrible. But in there, he makes this comment, and the comment is super duper specific, relating to a movie. Oh, he said, so they John Wicked me. And I thought, wow, that's literally the kind of language identification that happens in that Star Trek episode, where they're like Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra, and talking about rivers being cold and things like that to cool your jets. And here, cool your jets, right? Like that term itself is descriptive of a whole visual imagery. Well, this episode in Future Man alerted me that we'd already gotten here, that we're using this language that depends on knowing a whole nother storyline, right? If I hadn't seen John Wick, I wouldn't understand what that whole deal was about. I wouldn't get any of the references. And this metaspeak is actually something that's happening today for us. And it should be exciting for you as alchemists, because it shows you that we as human beings intuitively seek to convey larger scopes of meaning by packaging them into small referential phrases. And so, like in Future Man, it was they John Wicked me. And in the context of alchemy, it could be a reference to Mars. It could be a reference to Jupiter, and it could be a reference to their interaction or their interplay. Understanding who these mythological entities are, and then making the final step, which is transitioning so that you step away from the statue and you realize that statue is representing a symbolic image. The reason why all of our statuary is in human form is not, because everything out there is in human form, and we're creating our gods in our own image. It is, in fact, the opposite, as described by Manly P. Hall, when he talks about human symbolism, and he relates a concept taught actually by Madame Blavatsky, which is in relation to the statue of the god, and the anthropomorphization of these concepts is to show that we are part of those concepts. That's it. It's to give you context, to realize that you are the embodiment of the universe, that this embodiment takes these themes, and that these themes are universal: sight, sound, hearing, touch, smell. It seems that everything that we see and encounter in the universe relies upon these forms of physical contact and apprehension of the universe at large in order to convey their consciousness, to develop ideas, so that whether it's a complex individual like a human being, or whether it's your dog sitting at your feet and contemplating the next time we get to go out for a walk, or whether it's any number of other organisms, each at a different stage relative to its own frame of reference. And all of this is chained together. That's the purpose of the anthropomorphization of these ancient deities, these statuary. It's to show you your connection. It's to show you how you relate, so that you can see how you physically coordinate with those principles, with those ideals, how you can interact with them by becoming and embodying them. So this is the why. This is the method. By studying these things and recognizing that there is life to them, it will also help build within you passion for the esoteric, real passion. Because guess what? This material that I'm counseling you to investigate, to study, to make your own, to be part of what you think about, what you do, how you contemplate the world at large, how you contemplate the things that you see at play in stories and in movies, in comic books, whatever. It gives you connection to consciousness, all of this. Because these things have been held in the hands of many, many, many other human beings before you. And this is also a component of the Akashic record. That as you work through and understand them, the point is to then step beyond the user frame of reference and ask yourself the question that they have asked themselves. Why am I choosing a ram? Why am I choosing a centaur? Why am I choosing a crab, or a virgin, or a pair of twins, or a lion, or a bull? Each of these questions, you want to understand it from the operator standpoint, from the programmer standpoint, the person who understands why these would then be important. Because then, when you understand why, why these esoteric edifices, the architecture of it, is built a certain way, then you will be able to craft your own work, your own workings. You'll be able to understand that when you see the display of certain esoteric symbology, that this is a description of a moment, a period, a segment of time within space, that you are drawing upon ideas which, from a particular point of view, are eternal and everlasting, because they are part of the now, which is eternal and everlasting. So as you encounter them and as you handle them, as you work with each of these expressions, you will become part of them as they become part of you. And it will help you align your consciousness to understanding more completely the whys behind the esoteric. This is where you'll get all of your own answers. This is where the record opens itself up to you, because you'll see that none of this stuff is arbitrary. If ever it seems arbitrary, dismiss that immediately, because symbols are never arbitrary. A symbol always must point to something, something that is real, something that is experienced, something that is tangible. A symbol points to that, and that alone. If someone's trying to give you an abstraction of a symbol, they are literally giving you an abstraction of an abstraction. And this is a violation of core esoteric principles, because all things must point to something else. They must correspond. They're not just floating out there on their own. They are defined by the things that associate with them. And you learn this again and again as you apply yourself to various esoteric texts and as you apply yourself to the esoteric principles at large. So that's what I wanted to share with you tonight. I wanted to get you to realize that there's a reason to get excited about this stuff, that this stuff becomes more. You will use it. It's like training wheels. You will use it to get yourself and on your feet, on your balance. And then you will realize that it leads you to so many other directions that you'll keep it as a source and point of meditation. At least this has been my own experience after working with this stuff for many years. But that it is foundation now. It's not the thing that is the only thing that you're learning about. It becomes the thing that led you to all the really good stuff that you're learning about. Well, I hope that was helpful and informative, and I hope you guys had a really good time. I'm all out of coffee again, which means it's time for us to wrap it up. I'm Aubrey Forrest, the Modern Alchemist, and this has been Alchemy After Hours, and tonight we talked a little bit more about the whys and the implications of your selecting your esoteric practice, why it's important, why it's fun, and why it will engender within you a passion for learning and for exploration, and it will create within you curiosity and drive that will propel you forward in those times when you really need that motion. I'll talk to you soon.